There we go.
All right, everybody, welcome. This is WTF, or otherwise known as What the Forecast, a little bit of a play on words. I'm Rob Knight. My man behind me, or right next to me, is Jeff Vorick. For those of you who have watched us here in South Mississippi, obviously you remember Jeff from a couple of years ago. Jeff, when were you with XXV?
I became nightside after a while, so I was pretty much your counterpart on evenings. And then I initially started off, reporting and doing the weekend shows and filling in wherever. But yeah, I did nightside there for about a good year and some change, and decided to need a little change, in life, and moved on.
Yeah, you started with XXV. It was 21, was it?
22, and
22.
then 23 is when I eventually stepped into full time weather.
Okay. So Jeff graduated from state, came down, worked for me at XXV. I've been with, or I was with WXXV from 2013 till July of last year. Actually, it was June of last year, Jeff, June 25th. So it's been right at a year. Obviously, I haven't changed much. You
No,
know, a little bit of no more suits. A little bit of hair has kind of grown out just a little bit.
yeah.
Um, Having a little bit of fun with life, enjoying it back with my military days. Worked hard, worked long hours. XXV, man, getting up at 1:30 in the morning, that grew tired. You know what that was like.
Yeah, it got pretty tough. And I mean, out here, I'm gonna have to do the same, but we'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, that grind was tough. And I mean, it probably after a while, it just became you were probably questioning how much was it worth it? All
Oh,
this when you had real estate to work with and just
yeah.
enjoying life on the coast.
Yeah, and the difference between me and you, man, is that you're just starting out your career. I look
Yep.
at you and I look back at me when I was your age, and I was stationed at Shaw Air Force Base going 1,000 miles an hour, full of piss and vinegar, partied all night, worked hard all day, deployed and stuff like that, looking forward to the rest of it. But, and again, even though I have and I still have this passion for weather, I still want to be right there in the front, especially during tropical storm season, hurricane season, right? Um, they say that winners won the ball. You've heard that before, right?
Yep.
When shit hits the fan, that's where I want to be. I want to be right in the mix of things. But just getting up at 1:30, man, that just got boring after so many years and not having time in the afternoons, the evenings to stay up late, do family events and things like that. People think that, okay, you get up early, so you must go to bed real late. Well, we try to get some sleep, man. Sometimes you got to cut stuff short in the evening. And it's vice versa. If you work late afternoon, you're getting up later in the day, come 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're going down to the TV station. You're there till about 11 or midnight. For me, I didn't like that because I'm an early riser. So getting up at 6 in the morning without an alarm, sitting around for 7, 8 hours before you have to take a shower and then go to work for another 9 hours, didn't necessarily want to do that either. So
No, I don't blame you there. And I mean, I relate to the winners want the ball aspect because last year I was working in an office job in Houston and great, great company, great people I've met. I just, for a couple of reasons, I wanted to come closer to home being Florida and then where my parents are in South Carolina. But also, we had Helene and Milton last year, and I'm just sitting on the sidelines just thinking, man, I would love to be covering this from afar, just talking about a hurricane again. So that kind of started my itch to get back into this TV business. And now here I am. I'm in Savannah, Georgia. Now I work at WSAV, the NBC and CW affiliates out here. And while weekend evenings are my primary, I'm filling in on mornings the next couple days. And there's a lot of times I'm back up to my chief as well.
and you went from, the Houston area to, all that rain, the, devastating weather over the past couple of years. You went from there to now Georgia. And tell us why that's ironic, Jeff, because Georgia is what? The prime location for what?
Oh, we get hurricanes here, man. I mean, and most of the time it's typically those Florida crossers, right? But then you have the East Coast of those East Coast storms, the ones that just ride the coastline. Those can also be a big issue here. And
Yep.
unfortunately, it seems like I have a pretty nasty trend of pretty devastating weather following me because in Houston in May, I'm 2 months into my time out there last year, and we have a derecho that knocks half the city out of power. Then we go fast forward 6 weeks, we have Hurricane Burl. Houston had not had a direct hurricane hit since Ike in 2008. Not to mention the west side of Houston had been a while since they had the weaker side of Ike. Whole city just about was out of power for several days. I personally was out of power that entire work week.
Uh-huh.
So they tend to follow me.
Yeah,
I
I
know
think you.
I'm not the problem, but coastal Georgia is overdue.
Yeah, I think you were working night shift during that time that week, and I contacted you, and after a couple of days or so, your apartment had regained power and all that. But
Yeah.
as far as we've been talking about this year, Georgia, man, the Georgia coast, that's the number one, the hottest location that's overdue for a pretty big hit. So, you go
Yeah.
from, I guess, out of the frying pan into the fire, so to speak.
Right. Exactly. No, I can't say it better myself with that one.
But yeah, let's tell people why we started this, man. Look, both of us being in television weather and with Jeff still being in television weather, there's so many things that we have to abide by, especially the FCC rules and regulations. Jeff and I started talking about this, and we said, you know what? And Jeff will tell you, behind the scenes on television weather, he's looked at me probably more than a few times, thinking the word "fuck" is going to come out of Rob's mouth sooner or later, especially when it's something that I'm passionate about, that I'm talking about. So we decided that we wanted to start a podcast. We wanted to be a real podcast. We're not a couple of geek scientists. Of course, we are scientists. We know what the hell we're talking about. And we started this because we want to be real with you people. We want to tell y'all what's going to happen, especially with hurricane tracking. Jeff, we had to abide by the NHC as far as timing, tracks, and everything else like that. Obviously, we can deviate a little bit, saying my personal opinion, but again, we didn't necessarily do that just to kind of stay out of the public's, I guess, target line of fire. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Because if we say something right and it goes against the NHC, people are loving us. But then if it varies a little bit and it's not exactly what we said, they blame us and, hey, why the hell didn't you go with the NHC or whatever the case may be? So we wanted to do this to tell you people how the hell the weather is going to be. We're going to talk about some other stuff as well. Hopefully, a couple of fun things. This is our first one that we're starting out with, and you're going to see the process of how it's going to go through. But again, man, we just wanted to start something that was going to be informative and fun and something to where people can rely on to say, hey, I need to tune into WTF. I've got I'm taking the family out on the boat this weekend. Or tomorrow, I've got a big party, with coworkers in my house on the back patio. Let me check these guys out and see what's going on. So, what do you
Yeah.
think, bud? You
Or
think this is going to work out?
yeah, I mean, let's give it a try and see what we got. I mean, the other purpose might be, oh, let's see what Rob and Jeff think about this area to watch in the Caribbean that's only 3 days away from somewhere in the
Hey,
US right now.
hey,
I
that's a
mean,
little teaser right there, buddy.
yeah. Hey, I mean, let's go. Let's send it, Rob. Come on.
All right. So, hey, man, we want to welcome all of you that are tuning in. This is the very first episode of WTF, otherwise known as What the Forecast. Today's the 9th of July. And by the way, I hope you all enjoy the nice Independence Day weekend. I know we had a blast in our neighborhood as well. All kinds of fireworks going around the place. But then again, you got to let freedom ring every once in a while, right?
Hey man, launching fireworks out of the backyard was definitely fun for me, and it was a fun time, and it's just the vibes around the holiday is always great, and everybody's always appreciative, and it's just cool. It was cool to be here, especially during that time with all the people coming into town and all of that.
Yeah, man, I'm envious about where you are. You know what a big golf fan I am, and with Savannah being right down the street from you, man, I'm just really envious of that. Let me say that again.
Oh yeah, hey, coastal Mississippi though, people sleep on it too much, and you love it for a good reason.
Absolutely. Originally a New Yorker and never thought I'd end up down here, but hell, it's not so much of where you plan to be in life, but as to where life plans to have you.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
but all right, man, look, Jeff, we've been talking about this pattern. This has been a unique year, and every year has its own uniqueness, dating back to 21, 22. The multitude of hurricanes in the Gulf of Mexico, dating back to, other years where we saw, I want to say it was 2018. Was that
2020
when we
was
were?
the crazy Gulf year. I will mention that was the year we had New Orleans, particularly just based from national news when I wasn't working in local news in South
Yeah,
Mississippi yet.
yeah,
2020 had 7 cones. New Orleans was in 7 cones
yeah,
at one point.
and then two of them hit within 15 miles from
Yeah,
Lake Charles.
Laura hit. Both made landfall in Cameron Parish, Louisiana.
Uh-huh.
If I'm misquoting, forgive me, but both of them made landfall. Laura Cat 4 went right into Lake Charles, and then Delta was kind of turning northeast, and it left. Well, I mean, for one, it left a mark again on Calcasieu Parish and a lot of those areas, but a lot of Acadiana just got that was their second hit in a matter of, I mean, heck, 6-7 weeks. Then you had I'm trying to think of other ones. Marco thankfully did not verify that one fell apart in the Gulf right before Laura came in. Zeta was the big one for the New Orleans metro, along with South Mississippi getting a decent
Yep.
glancing blow from a Category
Yep,
One hurricane.
that cut east right through our interior counties. It went through Stone County and it washed out a bridge on the 26th. Vehicles, man, because they couldn't see what was washed out. They were doing 50, 60 miles an hour on that road. And before you knew it, they fell off of a cliff right into the bank of the other side of the bridge. The bridge
Hmm,
was only about 50, 60 feet, but I mean, that was just, yeah, that was horrific, man.
terrifying.
I was on air that night throughout the next morning. But no, back to my original thought about different years. Every year brings a unique feature, and people here in South Mississippi, and more than likely throughout the Southeast, will relate in a certain other way. There are certain years where we get yellow flies; they're abundant throughout the spring and the summer. There are certain years where we have bees that are abundant. Beetles this year, man, those beetles were abundant throughout the area here. Did y'all have that over in Georgia?
No, here we
Okay.
just, I mean, we had a few here and there, right? But I'm still getting used to the new area. And I mean,
No,
Savannah is going
dude.
to be different than Myrtle Beach versus,
Yeah,
say, Florida. So I'm still getting used to that. But we did have those.
yeah.
One thing to mention, I mean, with my weather this year, really quick, I mean, it's been a pretty standard summer here. Had a, we pay for our, we lose the heat, but we pay for it rain chances. We lose the rain chances, pay for it with above
Pay for
average
the
heat.
heat. Yeah,
Yeah. And I mean, let's
yeah.
get into this map real quick, Rob. I mean, you and I have both been mentioning 2019. This year has kind of drawn some comparisons. Not quite as wet,
Mhm.
but it's still Bermuda High is shaping a lot of the forecast, but we're still getting disturbed weather and a wetter pattern. Take a look at what we got here. I mean, look at that isobar going, that's the 1020 isobar going up generally right along the East Coast and
Yeah.
getting
And
closer to Cape Hatteras.
and just to the east of that, just to break in a little bit, folks, you see where the circulation is? That's an extension of the Bermuda high pressure, the dominant feature throughout the southeast here in the summer months. Typically, these isobars, these lines of equal pressure, they extend like this all the way into the western Gulf of Mexico. Now, the Bermuda high is tell people what the Bermuda high does, Jeff, as far as the steering flow goes.
Right. So yeah, Bermuda high is it's the typical subtropical high you find all over the globe. There's one that happens to be in the Atlantic, right? This is what hurricanes tend to follow deeper into the year. They will track along an isobar and it almost never fails. It won't cross it. And the placement and strength of it is oftentimes what determines where a lot of activity ends up,
Mhm.
Rob. I mean, that's where you've sworn by it. I've sworn
Oh
by it.
yeah.
I've watched it for years
Yep.
growing up in the Florida
Yep.
Keys. I mean, it's gospel for me, at least in terms of watching and seeing where these things will go.
Yeah, and this year, the stronger the high pressure is. Now, this isn't an exact science, but the stronger the high pressure it is, or the stronger the high pressure is, when it extends strongly into the central and western Gulf of Mexico, the outer extension bands, the weakest of the high pressure, and it depends on the strength of the actual storm itself. Now, with the Bermuda high stronger in typical years, it extends strongly into the central and western Gulf of Mexico, and we get that deep onshore flow as well. Winds come out of the south and the southeast. This year has been really different because the Bermuda high, Jeff, has not set up as strong as it usually does. It is strengthening, but it's not as strong as what I've seen in the past. And with high pressure off the California coast as well, we get these little fronts that make their way all the way down through the Gulf South. Some even lag overhead South Mississippi. A couple this past month in June, made its way through our area. And folks, I'm sure you noticed if you walked outside one morning, you would feel a drier air mass. It would feel so comfortable. That was the front to the south of the area. We were then under a northerly dominant flow. Typically, the high pressure is so strong, these fronts, they don't break through into our region. As a matter of fact, they typically die off along the northern Arkansas, Tennessee area, and it just gets absorbed into the high pressure. But with it being weaker this year, look at all the green throughout the region, Jeff. That's potential for rain, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, and then for your area, you got that little broken line, that little trough of low pressure sitting over there.
Yeah. And I mean, what you need here to get widespread thunderstorms in the summertime is you need a little bit of help in the upper levels, and we got that. You have some energy coming off as these disturbances moving through the upper Midwest and gradually come down with northwest flow and eventually make their way here. You don't need a strong synoptic system in the summertime. For one, it's almost impossible anyway, just given how strong the hot and humid air mass of the southeast is typically. This it's a little bit of a kick to give us just a little bit more in the way of thunderstorm coverage, but then the intensity of our thunderstorms can make a big uptick as well because it just strengthens the event, strengthens the updrafts, and yep, what comes up must come down in the summertime here.
That's
So it
it.
gets
The
yep,
bigger they blow up, eventually, and not only that, but the moisture content, man, the rainfall that these suckers can hold,
yep.
dumping several inches over the course of just an hour or so.
Yep, and it's just the beauty of the sea breeze in the southeast because the sea
Yeah,
breeze can shut off in coastal Mississippi once you get a good hot stretch going because the sound
yeah.
will heat up so quick and you don't have enough to drive it in unless you have a deep layer southerly flow there.
Mhm.
For us here, the Atlantic never gets into the upper 80s, low 90s typically, especially once you get out just past our immediate shelf waters.
Yeah, past the Gulf Stream there.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah, past the Gulf Stream too. But even like once you get out of the mouth of the Savannah River, I mean, it cools off a little bit once you get out of like say right on the Sea Islands there. But yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, basically we just get a little extra help with that there, and it's gonna be time will tell with how the pattern eventually flips because these systems will start tracking across the prairies in Canada. How much farther they dip down? Because
Yeah,
once we start getting easterly flow in the upper levels, that's when you're truly in the tropical air mass
yeah,
south of about 35 north or so. That's
yep,
what does shape the hurricane season because then we are really just watching pieces of energy being carried away like like ducks in a bathtub,
yeah,
just
just
carrying up
pushing
the coast.
west. Yep.
Yep. The thing is, so you have to see how it evolves, but generally speaking, yeah, we have enough. I mean, the Bermuda High is placed a little farther east, which is not atypical for this time of year. It is strengthening though, because I mean, we have a solid 1020 isobar right along the east coast, and that eventually
Mhm.
develops. But that mean trophic in the middle here across the midsection of the country, see how that breaks down, see what we can
Yep.
possibly look into, Rob. And I mean, but
Hey, look, for the time being, though, I don't know about you. I don't mind the Bermuda High not being this strong for a couple of reasons. Number one, it looks like, as far as the Atlantic goes, and of course, the National Hurricane Center, they're not going to come out and tell you this because if they're wrong, they're wrong, and they don't want to be wrong. But between you and me, and we've talked about this, and if you disagree, tell me. But with the high pressure being weaker, I tend to see these storms being more off, making their way perhaps through the central portion of Cuba, southern
yep,
Florida, southeastern and eastern Florida, including the concave area, that the area that protrudes off the Carolinas, right along Wilmington, those areas. I really don't see much developing and making its way into the Gulf. Now, with that being said, you get a strong enough hurricane later in the season, that bad boy is going to dictate its own environment. It goes wherever the hell it wants to go, obviously.
yeah, no, you're completely right in that. And I mean, basically, it depends on a few factors. So, where they develop now, one thing last year, these things were not developing quickly at all. The monsoon trough was farther north. These things were ingesting dust in the Sahel region.
Yep.
They come out north of Cabo Verde. The water is cooler, the air is more stable. Then last summer, in general, in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere, and multiple meteorologists I know have said this before too, that the air was just simply too warm in the upper levels. And for thunderstorms, you need relatively cold to cool air over hot air to make thunderstorms happen, especially in
Yep.
tropical systems, because they dictate their own thunderstorm activity more so than a synoptic system that will
Yeah.
drive it from air mass differences. And that would be the initiating factor. For this year, the way a Gulf system would have to happen more likely than not, because and wait to see how the Bermuda High builds in, right?
Mhm.
The Bermuda High would have to be so strong and a system would have to wait so long for it to be a western half of the Gulf threat. And you're completely correct though with the way it looks like it's developing, and this year looks like an East Coast year,
Yeah.
especially with the way the general pattern propagates back east. 2020 Gulf year,
Mhm.
2021 and 2022 gradually migrating towards Florida. 23 and 24 these were mostly Florida systems.
Yep.
Now you keep watching it migrate east. It's not in. I mean, I haven't looked at the research on it, and there are a lot of smarter people than me that can give you exact data and numbers. But I know a few storm chasers that are also degreed meteorologists that have said, hey, it's all cyclical and pattern based. And it looks like this year, based on what we know right this second, East Coast is more favored than, say, a true year where the Gulf is getting every single tropical wave.
Yep. And look, not to tell people along the Gulf Coast to let your guard down. Obviously, that's not what we're doing. What we're saying is that Central, South Florida, East Coast of Georgia, Carolinas, you guys might want to just be on a little extra heightened state of alert this year. Again, it's early in the season. These stronger storms, they're going to pop off come, September, October. And then when we get into November, even though they still pop off, we get that cold air mass coming in from the Northwest Canadian border and all that. So we get stronger fronts moving in through. That's one of the reasons why I like November, Jeff, when it comes to hurricane season. Even though that is the last month of the year and storms could potentially be very, very strong, at least we then have more of a 50-50 fighting chance because these cold fronts come in from the Northwest and the upper level steering flow now comes towards the southwest into the Gulf of Mexico, and that tends to recurve these storms more towards the east and the northeast as well
Look at
during the
Milton.
month of November and perhaps even October when you get weaker cold fronts moving through.
Look at Milton, for example, last year, formed off of a disturbance intermingling with some lee side tropic from the Sierra Madres in Mexico. That thing was never meant to be a Texas, Louisiana, or Mississippi storm. Notice how it tracked across. Let's think of
Yep.
another October storm, right? Late in the year, Wilma. While it was very atypical how late in the year that thing absolutely, well, not too atypical because there's been others that have done it in the Western Caribbean, but that
What year
thing
was Wilma? That was like 2000
05.
and say that again.
2005. That was the one
Okay.
that hit. That was the one that hit me in the Keys, and it hit
Okay.
Southwest, made landfall in Cape Romano, Florida. Tracked just straight across the peninsula, came off somewhere around West Palm Beach area. Yeah,
Yep. Hey,
that's the
speaking.
example of how those late season tracks go. Because in
Oh
the
yeah.
Carolinas, same thing. It's incredibly hard to get something climbing up the East Coast once you start getting multiple cold fronts in.
Yep. Yep. The whole steering flow changes. By the way, since we're talking about 2005, uh, we're in 2025, buddy. This is
I
going to
know.
be 20-year anniversary for Katrina, man. And look, I remember that bitch like it was last month. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just gotten out of the military, just started working at WLOX, just bought our new house in Woolmarket in 2004, July 2004, a year and about a month before Katrina hit. Luckily, in the Woolmarket area, we were spared all of that, but that's another story. We'll get into Katrina coming up a little bit later. But the nice thing about this pattern, the weaker high pressure off to the east, eastern seaboard and into the western Atlantic, and the high pressure over the southwest U.S., the weakness in between from the Midwest down towards the Gulf South, that's going to continue to keep all of this green throughout the region, at least from what I'm seeing through the end of the month, to where we're going to have the moisture, we're going to have the daytime heating, and we're also going to have additional lift with these little minor entities moving into the region from the Northwest, not to mention, Gulf and sea breeze effects throughout the region for you as well. Those sea breeze will ignite early afternoon.
Right, exactly. Until we get, I mean, basically here the way to shut off our rain chances is you get enough westerly flow from a ridge of high pressure moving into the upper levels, and you get a surface high set up over the Appalachians where we have relatively weak northeasterly synoptic flow to just take an edge off the humidity. That's the only way we can trade rain chances here. And while the Weather Prediction Center, Climate Prediction Center are looking at some heat next week, in the same breath, they're still holding on to potentially hazardous rainfall totals,
Yeah.
albeit just a little south. But again, we're a week out, and you're honestly looking at, I mean, it's the summertime. I mean, forecasts adjust quickly when you're talking
Yeah,
about
exactly.
those minor
Daily
details.
basis. But again, like you said, you sacrifice one for the other. Either you have the high temperatures and you get drought conditions, or you get these fronts moving in, you get wetter conditions, you get cooler temperatures. And dating back to 2019, I remember, I think we broke into the 90s 3, maybe 5 days throughout that year. And because of the heavy rainfall, not just throughout the spring and summer, but throughout the year, by mid-June, actually by mid-July, we had already seen the entire year's accumulation. It was a very, very wet year, but it kept temperatures down. We were consistently about 87 degrees throughout the entire summer month,
Yep.
which was great. You had a thunderstorm down the street, down the street, down the street. Cloud coverage in your area kept temperatures down. Some people were wet, others just reaped the benefits of the cloud coverage.
And
But
let me speak on the Carolinas really quickly because I was living in Myrtle Beach at the time.
mm,
Incredibly hot start to summer. And then you had standard sea breeze thunderstorms. Then when the dog days of summer came in, hot and humid. Oh, by the way, August of that year into September, Hurricane Dorian tracked right up the East Coast, right along the East Coast. It did not make landfall until Cape Hatteras, but nevertheless, fun 21st birthday for me.
oh man, that's the good that dude. That's one of the things I like about you, man. You've got, as far as these hurricane goes, I may have lived and forecasted through them, but you can recall the year, the month, the track and all that stuff. So Yeah, we've got a plethora of information coming at you, folks. So
Yeah.
hopefully you'll stay tuned in with us for a while. So what do we expect, Jeff, throughout the region over the next couple of weeks, couple of months, man? We're talking about the entire summer, right? So here's what the temperatures are going to be looking like throughout the region. At least we're not seeing any upper 90s or triple digits, with the exception of the desert Southwest. That's normal. They're about 116. Tonight, they're going to drop down to 27 degrees. Bit of an exaggeration,
Man,
obviously. Bit of an
man, I wish.
exaggeration, but they're going to get cool tonight. East of the Rockies, you can see just, I mean, just throughout the Rockies, up and down east of that, you've got temperate conditions, man. You've got decent conditions along the Midwest, upper 70s, low 80s throughout, northern Chicago, Minnesota, Wisconsin, New York, Northeast. They're looking at 70s and 80s, which is normal for this time of the year compared to what they saw, up until last week, where they were seeing temperatures in the mid and upper 90s. That was like 15 degrees above their climatological
JFK
norms.
hit 100 a couple times, right?
I believe so.
Yeah,
Yep.
which is just insane. I mean, you lived in Queens, you grew up in Queens, so like, you
Man, and you and I talked about this as well. I remember texting you, look, at least it's a dry heat, but you knew
out that
enough
day.
to say concrete and heat and the river, the Hudson River and all that stuff. Even though it was reading like 42% relative humidity, I'm guaranteeing you the feels like within interior Queens, Brooklyn, interior Manhattan, and all that stuff with daytime heating, all that cement and the river being right there, it felt ass uncomfortable. I'm
Yeah.
sure of
No,
that.
that
I've
I
felt
mean,
that before.
speaking on the nerdy weather topic with dew points, they still had dew points in the upper 60s, lower 70s, which is plenty high for the northeastern US, mid-Atlantic US.
Oh yeah,
So
yep. And this is what we're going to see today, and more than likely through the next couple of days into the weekend. Now, this is a broad spectrum of what to expect, but you can see, Jeff, from Houston all the way up through central Mississippi, then cutting east throughout Alabama, Georgia, and into the southern portion of South Carolina. That's where we're going to be looking at the intense real field temperatures of above triple digits, anywhere
yeah.
from about 105 to 110. 108 is the criteria for heat advisories, correct?
Yeah, 108's heat advisories, and that's I don't know how new. I know New Orleans and Mobile. I gotta jog my memory. At least the Weather Service office in Charleston, which is the main one I deal with for a vast majority of my counties, 108's the number there. And I mean,
Okay.
either way here we have. I mean, I've been looking at observations at Savannah Hilton Head International, which is our climate site. I mean, during the day, I mean, our dew point 70 to 75 each day, and I mean, I don't really care, exact real feel, it feels swampy and tropical. And I mean, we have to wait until the afternoon when we finally get a good sea breeze to roll through. Yes, the humidity does crank up another notch, but I mean, man, when it is 88 to 92 in the, by 11 o'clock or noon and the air is stagnant, it feels terrible out there. And I mean, it's
Oh yeah,
hazy here. It is hazy, hot, and humid for the Gulf South and the Southeast right now.
yeah.
As we have a lot of moisture pulling up with that disturbance in there, and got a little assistance from deep layer southerly flow in the Bermuda High. It's just,
Mhm.
man, I mean, we're getting closer to these dog days of summer, and it just keeps progressing, and the sun angle's as high as it can be. And I mean, by the way, everything has been warmed up plenty with how the highest sun angle comes at the summer solstice. And then, you have plenty of soil moisture. That humidity is not going away.
Oh
I mean,
yeah.
we've had rain on and off here. I mean, geez, every day for 2, 3 weeks now. And I mean, now you get a little assistance with some higher pressure, man. I mean, we're talking low to mid 90s, and
Yeah.
now we're getting into the point where every day heat index of 105 is pretty much a guarantee.
You get that direct sunlight, you've got that residual moisture sitting closer to the surface, that compressional heating adds in there as well. So yeah, temperature skyrocket, man, the heat index, especially like you said, if you've got either a moisture flow or if you have that residual moisture in the area, you're going to see high humidity content. And looks like, obviously it's a summer pattern, but for this year, it does look like this wet pattern is going to continue throughout the Gulf South and the Southeast, breaking right about your area, maybe about central Georgia or so. That might be the cutting off point to where the pressure is just a little bit higher east of that, to where these minor disturbances from the north and northwest don't really make it all the way to the east. But still, it does look like wet pattern, and of course that's going to mean some cooler temperatures. And when I say cooler temperatures, I'm talking about an average of like maybe 92 to about 88 for
Yeah,
a
you're
drop
starting your day
off.
off at
So
72, not 78. That's the
yeah,
main difference.
yeah. So look, it's going to be a humid summer. As far as what the National Hurricane Center is predicting, man, they're going above average, and we're going to have some numbers for you guys coming up within the next episode or something. Like I said, this is our first one. This is a bit of a dry run. We're kind of feeling each other out, the graphics and things like that. And we're going to continue to get better and hopefully gain your viewership as well. So,
Yeah.
but Jeff, we got about 7 minutes left, man. The tropics, I like it. Nothing much going on, man.
No,
We're pretty
nothing going
quiet.
on. Chantal was kind of interesting. Went so first of all, let's recap the season so far. Andrea, typical off, typical subtropical
Yeah,
type of low pressure forms up. Water's plenty warm. You get a good area under the Bermuda High of some decent conditions with a lack of wind shear and very quick hitting tropical storm. And it was over the middle of nowhere in the Atlantic, by the way, north of east of Bermuda.
yeah.
One thing to mention, Hurricane Center, I believe, will go back and post analysis and probably add on a few advisories before basically worth of hours on it, because I think they'll probably notice that it had tropical characteristics before that. Barry, your very typical early season Central American gyre
Yeah.
system formed up just after the Yucatan hit, I think somewhere between Tuxpan, I'm going to mispronounce this, and Tampico in Mexico. Not out
Mm.
of the ordinary. That thing was firing like a tropical wave, but I will let the experts at the Hurricane Center determine that one.
Yeah.
Chantal, your very typical decaying frontal low that started developing just off of Florida, quickly found a weakness, developed into a bona fide tropical storm. Beach impacts for me, it was mainly we lose one person to rip currents. That's too many. I believe we had 3 or 4 drownings at Hunting Island State Park in
Yeah.
South Carolina in the Low Country, and it came ashore, near Myrtle Beach. And I mean, this thing, while it was a lopsided, kind of ugly tropical storm, it was a bona fide tropical storm hit
Yeah.
for the Myrtle Beach area, the Wilmington area, and went inland and unfortunately dumped a lot of rain between Fayetteville and the Research Triangle in North Carolina. A lot of rainfall and flash flooding.
A lot of rain, a lot of winds too. I was surprised with the winds that they had in those areas as well. So, hey, look, not to push ourselves on a little bit, but that's about it as far as the forecast goes throughout the region. We've got a 7-day forecast, which is coming online the next time you see us. But we've got a couple of minutes remaining, so we're going to switch gears and talk about what's happening back towards the west, the Southern Plains, man. Jeff, and what these folks have been dealing with. I mean, folks, and if you haven't been keeping up with this is just such a horrific event. Just tremendous rainfall, tremendous runoff, flooding. The death toll in this is just, I mean, astronomical. Has it passed 200 yet? Do you know, Jeff?
I haven't looked lately. It was over 100 yesterday, and honestly, that's just and the hearts out to the families of the
Yeah.
victims. I mean, that's a horrible,
Yeah.
horrible event. Flash flooding, middle of the night, and you were at Lackland in San Antonio, right? Make sure I
Yeah.
get everything. You
Yep.
know, the hill country.
Oh,
It
yeah.
is. I mean, I'm speaking more so. I'm going to give Troy Kimmel from Weather Brains a lot of credit, and the University of Texas a lot of credit because he knows that area like the back of his hand. You got 3 inches of sediment and then you got granite right underneath, not to mention complicated terrain. That area is called Flash Flood Alley for a reason.
Everything just runs off, man. Everything drains, and it drains at such an astronomical rate. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah. And I mean, and the problem is, and that area is the hottest commodity in Texas right now, I'd argue, is the hill country. I mean, it's a beautiful
Yeah.
area of the
Yeah.
world, beautiful area of Texas. Not only that, everybody's moving there. It's
Oh, yeah.
glorious. I
Yep. And
mean,
like you said, about 3 inches of sediment on top, just granite, and just so that 3 inches, it gets washed off pretty quickly, and all it does is compile and run downhill. And you've got mud, you've got gook, you've got, just a river of nastiness coming towards you. And like you said, especially at nighttime, you don't know what the hell's going on. You
no.
wake up all of a sudden and it's like, what the fuck am I doing here? What's going on?
Yeah, and I
Um,
mean, I'm not gonna. There's no victim shaming at all with this because I'm gonna say the Austin San Antonio office, and again, not my words. I'm again courtesy to Weatherbrains and Troy Kimmel for this one, but like that office there in Austin San Antonio is one of the best in the country because they have to deal with that 100-degree west dividing line of weather in this country that is well known. The
they
warm
deal
and
with a lot.
moist
Yeah.
Gulf South, Southeast versus it is dry and arid when you get west of I-35 in Texas. They have to walk that fine line every day. They do a wonderful job. They were fully staffed and even had relief there. They had 5 people on staff that day. That office does not issue flash flood warnings unless it will trigger the wireless emergency alerts. But there's going to be some discord and some dialogue in the future about what can we do better.
Yeah.
I'm going to speak with this one with river warning sirens. These camps need to have sirens louder than tornado sirens there because in South Carolina they do it. On the Congaree and the Saluda. Don't quote me on the exact rivers, but I've seen pictures of it. A lot of other places do it too. And I mean, it's just an unfortunate tragedy, but I mean, hopefully everybody, meteorologists, emergency management partners, everyone can come together on some solutions instead of pointing blame to anybody, because the only thing that matters at the end of the day is lives lost. That's
Yeah.
all that
Yeah.
matters.
And like you said, man, with devastation like this, with a weather emergency, with a weather anomaly, whatever the case is, whether you're a civil servant, there's always a lesson to be learned, and hopefully, whatever the lesson is learned, they're going to put that into implementation as soon as possible. To number one and foremost, is to try to help their citizens and save lives, especially with what's taken place over the last week or so over in that area.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, all you can do is all you can do is stay weather aware, be prepared.
That's right.
And
No.
yeah, from our standpoint here, we inform you, give you tips, do better. And that's what our mission is here. Ultimately, we
Yeah.
want to be a good outlet of information for you in a digestible manner. And we want to just inform you and give you the best way to make decisions for your people. So, and at the end of the day, safety is the most important thing. Safety and preparedness is the most important thing. And we use our tools as scientists to help and better inform you of what's going to happen for the rest of your day and tell you what's the forecast.
I was hoping we were going to have some time to talk about some fun shit and some fun stuff, and just BS about some stuff as well. But with this being our first one, we've got about a minute 30 left. I think we've covered a few things. Um, I like the pickup between us, covering the Gulf South and the Southeast and things like that. I love the fact that you're a numbers guy. I love the fact that you've got all this stuff drilled into your brain, man, especially from 20 years ago when you were like, what, 6, 7 years old or something like that?
Yeah, 7 years old, watching Florida Bay wash
Yeah.
over the base Gulf side and Bay side of the Keys, man. That just kind of that
Yeah.
one just was that was what hit me, and I was like, oh, of course I was well off down there. I was like, well, this is cool. I definitely want to do this for a living in the
Yeah.
future.
I mean, compared to me, I joined the military and they were like, hey, this is what you can do and this is what you can do. And as far as being a pre-law, candidate with NYU at the time, but couldn't finish college, I said, you know what? I'll go ahead and take meteorology. I don't want to learn how to cook. I can figure that out on my own. So, but look, buddy, thanks for joining me today, man. It's going to be you and me from now on. Hopefully, we're going to get better at this. Not hopefully, we are going to get better at this, and hopefully, our viewership will increase as well. Folks, if you know somebody out there here in South Mississippi, throughout the Southeast, Georgia, Carolinas, and Jeff and I both love Florida. When it comes talking about the Keys, we can sit back, pop a six pack or two, and just talk about the Keys for hours on end. So, look, we want to thank you for joining in. We're going to have another one coming up soon, but for right now, Jeff and I are going to say goodbye. So, again, thank you for joining us, and be sure to tune in for the next one. Take care.